Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Altar Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of a lineage trained who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Sharadvatiputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on, up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra. The mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharibhatiputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Chenmo Deshi Doji Chode de lo bodon taro bo, enjo jobe bodon ode shang, nyane shin lo ju lo so wan de, shang bo to me yin yin nang zhu de, chode de yue de dang zhuo me be, ze zang sa le nian se nian bo, jia qian shi bie ji lang so wan de, 两人月面兄弟乐融融，大王这把日月可交接，三界公众不有色说，南无大愿觉罗娑婆的，协助当地中阿地上，嘎当地名不中的，念着那些国界所那所。 嘎当拉玛那拉娑瓦的，康健心的自己中阿巴，我到这边我修结束的，到俺这边到不开住的，要是举报接那娑瓦的，就是跟的拉玛都结场。 刚拉刚的些年最重的，就当天幕幕中自自边，只见那么能拉所望的，让将所着变了到一面，给上他把这边将我。 在月这边到天在把一，甚至些年能拉所望的，借我更多样的那么多，面去这边拉龙井，撒当浪就有的少做的，多就讲给我。 念多因果三界觉当诸界中当当，想求不多当年就是钱，那给去界界别所能见，罗罗平息三界诸个修三界觉，诸界中当当，想求不多当年就是。 那给去界界别所能见，罗拉平息三界诸个修三界觉，所见就能拿相求不度当年就是，那给去界界别所能，罗拉平息三界诸个修。哎呀。 哎呀，哎呀，他还说他也比生前堂姐给端的，他家做比上街就公公就马到把的，生前堂姐给端，他先把记住图也没读，人家那眼生前堂姐就端准备切的，你生前堂姐给端住谁干的人，那地域切端那眼去我说，那告诉宝宝爷你前年切个眼生个切，那我这就些眼人两眼了，马他的眼把都割不起。
Right. In order to cultivate the positive motivations such that may I establish entire sentient beings to the state of enlightenment. So, in order to establish entire sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, I will now participate in receiving the teachings of the Dharma at this particular time, and without which it is not possible for me or any individual who wish to establish entire sentient beings to the state of enlightenment. It is therefore I must receive these teachings for the benefit of all other sentient beings.
대양 예파도 나서기 제거야 대양 제제 몸에 소리지 많이 봐. 아니 소속이 대한 다시 받지 주어라 대마도 랑가지는 매봐. 다시 봐 가져 주고서는 강에 매봐. 싸워니는 강에 매봐도 땐데 대화 더 그야지. 예파도 그거야나. 아니 랑가 대마도 이제 아니 녀매와 진사네 대랑 예 주고 제제 몸에 소리지 싸워니는 말에.
So it is not something that we're just engaging in the meaningless activities. Rather, we are receiving these teachings to embark upon the spiritual path, in other words, the Dharma path. It is definite that we need to engage in such a path in order to perfect the purpose of oneself, in other words, fulfill perfectly one's own purpose and that of the purpose of other sentient beings, without relying upon receiving the teachings of the Dharma. There is no means for one to gain the ultimate state of happiness, nor can we establish others to the ultimate state of happiness.
저기 sembo zombo de sembo jachombo de 용와 지메 제메라 때나 용가 투아 인자네 아니 지 맞종문에 지 로봇이 지 사관 인자네 대체된 되는 tempo 투병보 네 랑게 민산 되게 나칼에 미바시 될라나 집에 남아서 고대 자신 쉬지도 섬다지 지바라와 고대지 아니 랑게 타고다 라다 라냐게 네 타입에 선제 뭐지게네 내가 쉬be 남아서 저들에서 쳐려지메 세 저기 손을 쉬침보지 이거네 네 여바지 네 시절에 매베 제제다 제와를 매베 대반이게 담비 토네 네 가만히 손치 매바 칸 용토도 지쟁이다.
In order to in order to generate a positive motivations within one's continuum. So here now, when speaking about cultivating a positive motivation cannot be generated without causes and conditions. It is therefore, it must, positive generation must be generated by relying upon immaculate causes and conditions. It is for this, let's take a couple of minutes to meditate on by visualizing Buddha in front of oneself in the space, surrounded by all those lineage gurus of stages, the great teachers on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and cultivate a strong faith towards the object of refuge that you have visualized. Similarly, one visualizes oneself being in their presence, surrounded by entire sentient beings. So, entire sentient beings. So one must try one's best to cultivate faith, uncontrived faith towards object of refuge, and extend one's compassion by cultivating a great compassion and extending towards other entire sentient beings. With these two combination of practice, let's meditate a couple of minutes on it.
아야, 당아도 느낌 비버진냐나네. 강sem버세 추스나레. 아니 강sem버세 지 강속에 샤원데 가르레 살와이나 아니 강속에 지 계속 카톡 샤와이나 다 면중 친구들 로제 제거로 면치. 아니 면중 친구들 가르레 로제 제거로서나 아니 강속에 쪼게 나서대. 아니 레게 나서세데 정용이 샤네 이바체. 아니 생게 나서들라이니 랑지번 제비 진진이 종내다 다들 제비 당지기 미반이게 놓나 수능에게 근데 라지 선제 당제 되다 아니 미바데니라 세네 아니 상가데 제고레 아니 세게 아니 드르기 합세되는 주어야잖아 아니 뭐네 지 가신 쪼신데 지아 주여번데 지레도아
So with these motivations, at this point, what we are doing is we are gathering and we are participating in receiving the teachings on the medicines, in other words. Why it is said a medicine? Well, we are engaging in the practice or receiving the teachings of the medicines and how to, use those medicines, how to engage oneself in practically to use those medicines to cure one's sickness. So here, when we are speaking about sickness, the physical sickness and the mental sickness, at this point, we are not really touching this physical sickness, the part of physical sickness. We're rather talking about mental sickness. What are the mental sickness? The primary mental sickness are Jinzin, which is self-cherishing mind. We're suffering from this chronic disease of self-cherishing mind and the self-grasping, Danzin. These two are the main sicknesses that we all are suffering from. And so now all self and entire sentient beings, without engaging in such a practice of how to take medicine to alleviate those two chronic diseases, it is not possible for self and all other sentient beings to gain the state of enlightenment. It is therefore, one should be delighted and think that it is such a fortunate to be able to participate in such a discussions of alleviating those chronic diseases for self and other beings.
오늘 다 드리기 때 간주 제도 아니게 간주 제거의 상제기 다라서로 저랑이 동해등에 에네 샤기네 두고 말에 디바데 치기 투두고 말에 아니 저 가려 제거에서나 아니 상제기 저랑나마 추기 내루데 때네 아니 저랑이 내루데 셰바잖아 아니 저랑 아니 때데 대화기 살아야 도고 그래서네 아니 상제 코너랑이 송바데 땅아서 거서 봐봐 다랑기 샤와를 주비 거래 뭐네 제와이나 로와
So it is therefore, as Buddha has stated, that I cannot clean the negativities of other sentient beings by my hand, nor I can cleanse the sentient beings' negativities by pouring a water onto them. So how can I how can I assist sentient beings to alleviate themselves from those sufferings is by teaching them a suchness, or by teaching them the ultimate nature of reality. And it is by means of understanding this ultimate nature of reality, or the mode of existence, actual mode of existence, will lead oneself to the state of happiness. It is therefore we should also, as a follower of the Buddha, must do the same, to to follow the Buddha's teachings on suchness or the ultimate nature of reality to gain a state of happiness.
Yeah. Tama tsuyo tere nilu che tawa jende ge tanda nga zo chenye che nilu tembi zhongde thoma rani ge che tawa jende zishin jena shijin malo ba tembi son tene jaga ge benro na ji ye rani ge nyangshe che toba rangi la chong ye shijin de son shenge telan jeba na tele tene be ge benro so ge lo zawa da benro ta nyang de jende che ta me jo rangi che che na ba de na je ne nyangse ne nga so ta ma nyang ba chuma shi ba yo ne de ge ne Lam Rim Chenmo la chenye che ko spa.
So now, this is the teaching that we are receiving to understand Niluk, which means the suchness or the ultimate nature of reality. So such teaching is given by the great masters of the past, but they themselves has internalized these teachings and gain the realizations of the ultimate nature of reality, which is then, given, bestowed the teachings to their followers and commentated by their followers, such as great Indian masters, the Pandits, which is then be, transmitted to the great Tibetan masters and the Lords of us, or the translators and roughly translated the Lords of us. It's not an actual translation, but just a translator. And so such a teachings, that's a precious teaching with an unbroken chain of lineage, the teachings which really serve as elevation from the suffering, and having such a wonderful opportunity for ourselves to engage in such a teaching or to participate in such a teachings is very fortunate.
아니 좀 그런 게 제제시나 아니 너가 좀 쇼래올에 매 지제 창조 산능에 내가 상황에 받아 제세 아니 쇼알하게 좀 신주 친구는 좀 쇼래올에 지 쇼지도 더 상에 차진 창조장에 매능에 아니 되게 좀세 아니 상조랑에 chambo는세나 아니 할래 아니 좀지 좀 그런 게 지와시나.
So the teaching that we are receiving, the great teachers on the stages of the path to enlightenment, it's not just a one part of teachings of the Buddha, but rather it actually serves this Lam Rim Chenmo, the teachings of Lam Rim Chenmo, serve as a synopsis which bring together the key points of the both Sutra and Tantra. If you look at the actual teachings, it actually encapsulates the teachings of teachings from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva, and also the teachings from the teachings of the Guya Samaja, which is highest Yoga Tantra's teachings.
인자는 television delle cene c'è ne ciò poi ne ne poi ni ga che lo ma c'è ne 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 sa je son ba che ne sai sa je ba de ne dam ba go lo ma c'è te yi ba sa ne ma te no go su shak.
So now such a teachings, when we are receiving such a great teachings, the teachings that we are receiving, which is the entire teaching with encapsulation, entire teachings of the Buddha, one must receive by so cultivating appropriate motivations. So then now we will be, going through the stages of outlines from the greatness of the enabling one to know that all teachings are the greatness of the enabling one to understand that all of the scriptures are instructions for practice.
Jalama Cheta Rimbala Sai Sajini, and teaching a lot there are largest of Senate bits, and then a lot of Rimbala, and Tenite, Kadin and Yangovache.
This will then be followed by the in sequence which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions, followed by the two sub outlines, how to rely on the teachers, which is the root of path, and how the students train their mind after having relied on the teacher.
Take you mentioned that you Jean Langi Chagriana Salosona, Lente Jochoro, Tomba Gagan said on the Bachi, then and then Gagan take each other, Somba, and again, Lancha and Dogo said, Catch a baby tower, drunken, social lesson.
So this is, enabling us to, enabling us to answer the question. When someone asks you the question, what kind of teachings that you are receiving? Or would say, I'm receiving the teachings of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is receiving such a teachings by relying upon authentic teachers. In other words, the qualified teachers, and following the teacher's instructions unmistakably.
Langerin Manyasin, Jube Champion Langerin Manyasin, that in a Tombo Ninja, that Jube Champion Langerin Manyasin, say such a song. Teaching la Jube got about Saint Conatemba, Saint Jetta Jibi, Saint Jena Shibala, Hotsage, that in the Bodisa, the Saint Jetta Jibi, such a Jichi, Jocana de Jawa. Saint Jean Rimba, and then Chokazon, Makasa, Jibi, Chokazon, and then also Tama. Nesseji Chokazon Suyane, Shanchugi Saint Casingala Rani, Lojan gets set on them, but you get the lesson. Any Chubut about 7 Demichi, then any Shanchu sing it number Matoba Toba shed, and the top of Manyamba, and the Yamba Shichu Kandechagare said, and Tamba Kandechina, Luciba.
So we are on the on the particular chapter to receiving the teachings on the chapters of how to cultivate bodhicitta and how to engage in the practice of bodhicitta by means of its ritual. And so here, as we discussed this earlier during our last teachings, that first we must analyze ourselves whether it is possible for one to observe those precepts by understanding understanding what kind of precepts that need to be observed. Having understood very clearly, then you have a conviction that you can actually preserve those precepts. And with this conviction, then one can then receive the precepts of the bodhisattvas by means of its ritual.
That's such a drawing that cousin, and then got to get Loja dedicated and lesson any Shanchu sent a Yango sing at the Yona Shitsu Madawachi and the Jona Segura doing it in Madawachi and Ma true in Echindoa. The Richin Nolo and the J. Romachi and it around me, but Ronlu the one is Janani, taking the Bate Kadi, the Bate, come on a change in the Kadi, the Redwa, and get anything such a trend.
We have gone through those, refuting the others' positions, having refuted, and then establishing one's own position by the Lama Tsongkhapa, his own standpoint. And we see there are several, statements made by the others in a position, but all those others that the positions are, but other positions are negated or refuted, and establish Lama Tsongkhapa or his own standpoint or his own positions.
당연히 가져서 가서 견자대.
Better done as the one better done it again. 자동의 현관에 대다오네. 강한 맛이 메테베 치료 세지.
아니 메테베 싫어서. 네 가서들 미세게 다스게 잡는다. 메테베 싫어. 알 마시바 메테베 싫어. 마시바로 메테베 싫어.
라오
메테베. 그래. 근데 그거 아니 저는 대신 미세게 먼저 나지도. 지단에는 데려와 가서게 배나 담바생이들 담바데 동지셔서나 자원이는 매버 차로 걸어와 자원이는 매버 차서나 그걸 실제 제거서 다녀요 말어와 민전에 다지 이게 강의 시에 돼서라 카힐라 주연레버 장제레마도 담바 자원이는 동고 말에 담바 자원이는 동소나 근데 실제 다녀요 말에 거기 가서 실제 제게 시에 걸어와.
So now here suddenly we were talking about how we can restore if one's precepts has undergone declinations and unable to observe the precepts and it's undergone declinations, and we were on the chapter that we were discussing on how we can, by what means that we can revitalize those precepts, and how can we revive those precepts. So here suddenly we are talking about we're not talking about we are up, that our precepts is uprooted. If you have declined your precepts from its root, suddenly there's no way of revitalizing or reviving that precepts. So here we're not talking about eliminating the roots degenerating from its root.
아빠도 나비 취지에서라 나비 취지에 뭐도 저바장에 상주생게 자동 로고고 말해. 되게 자동이 바데 좀 강내장 소에 말해서도.
So just by indulging in those 4 dark practices will not really uproot one's precepts. Therefore there's some other positions that has stated that once you have indulged in the 4 dark practices, your precepts will be uprooted. However, from one's own position, this is not so. It's just decline, but there's a possibility that if one can realize that how the declination of one's precepts by indulging in those 4 dark practices, one can revive or revitalize those precepts that has undergone degeneration.
되지. 다들 내가지게 아니 예바 들지 좋네. 아니 뒤서 들지 창을 내서나 예바 차거리마도 창대 만대고는 연주 예바 제소나 아니 연주 야 하소 제거를 깨체지 시에서 대퇴고 말해서 대련도다. So
here we have it's in the text it's very clearly that we have disagreed the several other positions. There one said that they said there is a certain limits. That too is others position, certain limits where you can let yourself, where even though that has undergone degenerations, you're able to revitalize your precepts. If your declination is beyond that particular limit, then you will not be able to revive or revitalize your precepts that has undergone degenerations, which is also others' positions that is not agreed by one's own position, right?
당연로이다. 이제야 뒤쪽 지와네. 녀와 코지 슈발라 때네. 때바 나나 대네 도이데 때네 많이 봐 수준리위 나실래 dagi jeba tenla pesimbe demashi do sondu.
So now we're reading through the text here. It's on 82, starting from half of the third line, I think. When you lost the aspirational spirit, you lost the vow as well. If you make the assertion that they do lose their vows, then you have deposit these dark practices of the fundamental transgressions. Yet this is not said anywhere, and that's incorrect. Furthermore, reckoning a period of time is based upon the period of explanation of questions of the Upala Sutra, Upala Paripachar Sutra. But since I have proven at length in my basic path, awakening, the explanation of the chapter on ethical disciplines of the Bodhisattva's level, that this is not the meaning of the sutra, I will not explain it again. So here now, others' position is actually, he said, others' position has said that whatever that he has stated earlier, it is based on the questions of the Upala Sutra. However, from its one's own side, whatever that is mentioned in the Upala Sutra, questions of the Upala Sutra, the meaning of the Upala Sutra is not that. The one that is other position is stating, that is completely wrong meaning. There's a different meaning to it.
Senje ni patang sumbatan jiba so domashi doshin lama nangje tende senje be jang juji sen yonsu zoba jawa jor goso sondu.
So here now, the mentally abandoned living beings means that when considering them in general, you think, I'm not able to work for the welfare of all these many beings. When you abandon them with this thought, it is clear that you abandon the aspirational spirit of enlightenment. And when you considering a particular living beings, if you have the thought that I will never work for the welfare of this one, and then like destroying the whole collection by destroying just a piece of it, you destroy the spirit of enlightenment, which is developed for the sake of all beings, where it otherwise you could cast aside many beings, a second, third, fourth, and so forth, develop the spirit of enlightenment for the sake of the remaining beings, and would necessarily have thereby generated a completely perfect spirit of enlightenment. But this is not the case.
The Senja Lo Pansi de Carson on the Senja Chulamin, the Lo Bawiana, Shamin Santara Toros. The member Senja Kayormaji get under the get to some Marilla Yanaya, and Senja Chulami Carchetal, Mebacha, Suba de Tondo. Nichorang Tenri, share Senja Junga to Dijani, Dele Jamba Senja Lamina Shanchu Senja, Yinsing Yoga Channel, and it's all in the money. Senja Yonojola Shanchu Sensitive, Chichon go resumedro.
So now here what it says is now, when speaking about generating bodhicitta, one must do so by cultivating and motivations of working for the welfare of entire sentient beings. One must gain the state of enlightenment for the benefit of entire sentient beings, not making any kind of distinctions among the beings. We can't just say that I will not be able to work for the entire sentient beings, or I can work for rest of the sentient beings, except those people, like 5 or 6 of them, or the 5 of them, 4 of them. You would say that I will do my best to work for the entire sentient beings to gain the state of enlightenment. Except, so if you make such exceptions, and this is not going to work. When speaking about cultivation of bodhicitta, one must have an equal, motivation. Your motivation must be equal towards all other sentient beings, without exception.
Lobatelé nyama nyasi ki loja de dendijila ngon zivere sena ni mombo che deba che doa dendigi deba de ni shanchu langzhang yin deba de joji yin zebare senge ye de ye joji yin deba de yime yi keche je da doa teno ye kanje joji yin deba de senge langzhang deba de khontu ne ni jiba da mande de she shaw ye ni shanchu senge loba de de shaw de gore senge ye de linse ji debudu.
So this will then, we will be following the following text that we will be reading is the commentary on the difficult points of the lamp for the path to enlightenment, about the precepts, about these precepts of the spirit of enlightenment. How we can observe these precepts, and by what means that one degenerates one's precept or decline one's precepts and so on, will be discussed in the following, our text.
Tanda langzheng jeba xian da tisu noda katu la shadu kasa langzheng yin jeba le sele shu ba sele shu ne jehi jeba xian sebo katu la shadu.
So it is clearly mentioned as a commentary on the difficult points of the lamp for the path to enlightenment. It's very clearly mentioned that they misinterpreted the meanings of the commentary on the difficult point of the lamp for the path to enlightenment.
Yeah, 다행이다. 대다 생체 절로바 데라 송도하네. 랑저 제바네 제보 엔더보티당 류주당 통메당 바오당 시와라당 센정고메당 시와라이 아마레 시와조라 소벨 루 타데바 제데 카지네 루 타데바 제데스 다 데반두스 요레 생이게 근데 지금도 뭐지도아 또 못해봐 지선다.
So now here it says the commentary on the difficult points of the lamp for the path to enlightenment says of these precepts of the spirit of enlightenment that there are the different systems of the king Indrabhuti, Nagarjuna, Asanga, Ayasura, Shantideva, and Chandragomi, Chandarakshita, etc.
타데반제데 카지네 손도 다도서 가능 되고 있잖아. 카지네서 센동고 제반의 쇼발라 쇼바 이제 러자 진이 여바나 셰도 지지지. 아니 라라네 돌레 송바 탕치 송자이노 셰도지. 라라네 총랑비 러자 진이 여바 셰도 젠다네 로바 데다보 셰 미셰도. 카지네 정지 러지 된도 센제 메제바 हमारे सैम में जेबा ता जेबा जी छुजे सों शाओ शे को ने लोबे देता के लुदेन दो ने चां सोंबे रंगे लामे खाना ये लु जों शाओ शे दा के लामे सों शे छेजिन देता चां दो यु देन yin ba ना हमारे दो बा ना मो सों दो जेबा दे बते से बोलो.
So it says that some assert that the precepts of the spirit of enlightenment are all the precepts of the both initial generation of the spirit of enlightenment and for the engaging in the bodhisattva deeds. Others, it says, assert that you have to observe every precept stated in the sutras. While still others say that they are all precepts for a person on the path of accumulations. Some do not assert that they are a specific trainings like this or that. And yet others stated that in addition to the precepts of the refuge, you observe the 8 precepts of not abandoning the intention to take up the 4 light practices and forgetting the intention that leads to the 4 dark practices. The commentary explains, my guru said that since the system of these masters are each based on sutra, you should uphold whatever system your guru gives you. It claims that all of this are the meaning of the sutra.
that's it. That is the 강가긴 도예 공부래 얘나 수서랑하게 라메 사자 가르나오에나 대다기 강여로와지 제선로와에나 디그레스나 아니 다르게 손지 좀 말해서 대다던데도.
So it is saying there are many different ways of explanation based on the different sutras, the meaning of different sutras. However, here it says, it is still another position, it says, whatever one's own guru gives the instructions, one must follow that guru's instructions. This is how they claim that all of this are the meaning of the sutras.
Yeah. That long-term debate setting in the meaning
From this onwards, we will be reading through the actual, in other words, one's own position, the actual meaning of what that has been discussed earlier.
Children Japan there so do geshe tomba ne jibe shenye chembo na juyin Japan menze la sa na chue ne jiba na juyin zepa sheje na chue be che sun de do sa de ni ye do.
So in general, the great teachers of the lineage descended from the Tomba is referring to the Geshe Tomba. Do not recognize the commentary on the difficult points of the Lamb for the path of enlightenment to be a commentary by the great elder, but the lineage from the Nakso accept this as the great elder's composition, and also accept it is as a teachings hidden by Nakso, and still it was well known to earlier scholar that Atisha composed a short commentary while in Purang.
Oh, dosa so do.
Oh, name didn't matter. Now dosa.
Do. De chi de sheng lo shen de de. Yan jang zhen do. Yan jang hamanala traba. Ane Purang sen je ba du ba shin je sa. De sang ye se pe ba na de lo za yue nyan ba shu ne je se dang se wa du be. Ju yun je ba du ba shin je ba la son zhe xi lang bi xie ba ren mang xi nyan bi ji se du be. Du be sa. No ngo ba ga zong na ke jong ke den le bo xie ba. Mo bo na ye da ge jang ma no xie ba na jen ma no ka bi jen dang sa. Lam Rim na se zhang ne xie do song du jia da. Te ba de lo dan to.
So it is said that when he thereafter arrived in the It is said that when he thereafter arrived in the Samya, the translator asked him if he could add to it, and the translator subsequently explained it. Therefore, the great elder did compose a short commentary.
Long one. Oh, te to. Te Then don't temper to see you, Lula, as a pronounce it to you, Jagad, Nepal in the Soka Sansa, Himan Don Conro was treated, the Tromati. The pronouncing it a Chuaj, and Tanda Shanjo Lanju Drama in Jabba, you teach in Zabate, don't temper cottage in a sugar sondoa.
So,
You don't temper get on to machine in the
commentary on the commentary on the difficult point of the lamp of the path to enlightenment, given by the Georgi or the Adisha at the Purong, the place where it is called Purong. It is a border between Tibet and Nepal, which is accepted by oneself as well, accepted by Lama Tsongkhapa as well.
Then the science you pay Xi Junla, and science people and you lost out to tell Jabba Towns and Nation, number Jabbares and Sunjin dos, and I Tapura Mindu, go Kashela and Shibata Meding into the do, and go Kashela Shiba Yapo, and the Jerome Koronagi, Selena Jona Mobokosha Sondoa.
So then it's also said that after arriving in Samya, there had been detailed commentaries by the Atisha. However, from one's own position, those are all not very clear. Given a commentary that is when given at the Samya monastery, this is also not clear from one side. It is not clearly or definitely accepted by one's own position.
Today, Kanji Nasoki, Ranlu, and Ranlu Segura, Naso Judan, the Karapagosan, Georgi in Zibi Shantu, Lanji, Drama in Jepa, Dudi Jeva, Sevo Sejanche. And she's in Jugan Jebata, Gisele Chang in Ramada Chena, Jeba Tanda, Yonda, and Jeba and Jemanimado, Copi Tawaji member Sevo Sejan or Kashila Solamaza, and Pitaway about the Jeparangi in Jeroa. Casa Jeromachi in Japan and Pita was Sulena and Kuja and Richmond and Transha Sondoa.
So here now, the commentary on the difficult path of the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment by the Atisha. This letter, it is commented by the many other masters, and those are many of those commentators are not really authentic. So it is therefore in this particular text, the great treatise on the stages to the path of enlightenment, it's actually abstract, the explanation that's abstracted from the authentic source by Lama Tsongkhapa and asserted in the Lam Rim Teachings.
Menante Senchipa Sheba, Jusenja Lojala Shenane, Jandri Lojit in the Kanagi Chu Jela, Jodo Sheba Sanji, Choba Misibe, Metela Sondo.
So here said there are some above mystics, and there are also many good explanations of the meaning of this of the scriptures. So I have cited in the stages to the path and elsewhere in explanation of the points on which it is not mistaken. The aforementioned precepts of the commentary on the difficult points of the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment are not reliable. So the statement that precepts of the spirit of enlightenment are all the precepts for both initial generation of spirit of enlightenment and for engaging in the bodhisattva's deeds is wrong. It's wrong. So because if you take the precepts of the generation of the spirit of enlightenment, it cannot possibly be sufficient for them to be just avoiding the 4 dark practices and taking up their 4 light practice in addition to their precepts of refuge.
Take it, Carsana, the Gong Laundry and Japan, Jubitamba Mombochi gets swimming, and they shan't you sing a lojare, Selode, so in a Tibetan, Tongumindu, and in Genda do so.
So therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa is mentioning in this particular text in the Lam Rim Chenmo by saying that there are many who are claiming those are the explanation of the great so-and-so great beings of the past, the commentaries. However, when it comes to the Lama Tsongkhapa, he said, those are not an authentic source. It is not a correct commentary.
Mese Jambala Shenane, Dei Lojalan, Dole Sumba, Tanchi, Shobala Shuba, Menche Loja, Loba Megode, Shunane, Dambil Hobatan, Che maybe Sharo Sondo. Maybe you put the lotion and the maybe Sharo Sondo. Kashi be Loja ni Mato be Lojane, Landra Senchi Chokata Yela. Should be dollar no basumba, on shit you want to be shower, she is sombe. Send you good in Haja Manawe Madriso or something.
If you take generation of the spirit of enlightenment to be only referring to the aspirational spirit of enlightenment, then when it comes to the precepts of the aspirational spirit, it is not necessary to train in very precept states in the sutras, nor in the precepts for everyone up to and including those who are engaged in the bodhisattva states. Otherwise, the precepts of the aspirational spirit of enlightenment would be the same as the precept that comes with the bodhisattva's vow.
Lala Kachi Mandao doing it as a non pencil and get us on the Kaudo, Tandati, Kaudo.
Here from this, in this particular, paragraphs that actually pointing out the paradoxic statement given by the, other masters of the past by claiming that those are the commentaries of such and such masters. But if you really look at very carefully, you will find there are some contradictions among themselves.
Then you get Chipachiri. No, Mason Koro Rajila, the member Shanchu Sanjaba, Juba Shanchu Sanjaba City, now Daniel Shoba is same as each other. I'm Yorova.
So there are differences between how we adopt the aspirational spirit by means of its rituals and how we adopt the engaging spirit of enlightenment by means of its ritual, and the difference between how you actually engage in the practice of aspirational spirit of enlightenment and engaging spirit of enlightenment.
Oh yeah, come on, Chupa.
Let's take a 10 minutes break here. I haven't completed the reading of the text earlier, so let's complete this before Rinpoche starts to the next, new chapter. Here it says, all the aforementioned precepts, except for the two precepts, the light and dark practice, which follow the Kasyap's chapter, following the lamp for the path to enlightenment, and the ritual procedure for the spirit of enlightenment and the bodhisattva's vow. There's a statement that says to train in the precepts in the 7 Dharma Sutras, but since it says one quickly attain the super knowledge, should observe the precepts, and these precepts are not specific to the spirit of enlightenment, so I have not written about them here.
Yeah. Tawana Tanda Yeti Kanja Senare, Landra Debata, Tata Madewa Yena, Tanulu Kandres, so Yena, Tetana, Sondo, Tetana, Rangi Lune, Pense Matonda, Sinchen Lu Maton, Matobi, Lajana Gena, Shan Senja Dambata Medem Pardo, Medembi Pardo, Shan Senja on the Shebe, no Mejang, Pama Gawa Kalam be Laja, Gawa Yube, Neshet Jube, Doji Shaba Shao Sondo.
So now we have gone through a long discussions of the erroneous statement of others' commentary based on the others' position. So now, what is correct positions, one's own position? What is, and having negated the other's position, what will you establish from your own position? So here we start from this one's own position by reading that text, by saying, thus, my own position is that, with the exception for the precepts, not to relinquish the aspirational spirit of enlightenment and not to mentally abandon living beings, breaking the precept does not constitute transgression relative to the spirit of enlightenment until you receive the Bodhisattva's vow. Nevertheless, if you break the precept, you break the precept that comes with your commitment to virtue in term before you take the Bodhisattva's vow. You therefore commit a misdeeds, and you should make a confession with the four powers.
That's Vincent Tomba the Saint Lutombani Chasona, and Damba Crotaton Dogure, any Yamba Suches and a lawyer Mari. Tele Jemba, Joneswina, any Kissishan Damba Mengenaya, Pama Gawa Chagre, any Nibotaji on the Shane, any Shajiche Karsari Shane, Dagre so etera.
So here now, as long as you have not abandoned your the spirit of enlightenment, such as aspirational spirit of enlightenment, or and giving up for the working for all or working for the welfare of other sentient beings. As long as you have not abandoned this too, whatever the degeneration that may occur in your precepts can be revitalized or revived by means of confession practices.
Kasa Shiba Shawoji, Sanseja Damba Tone, Dambi Laja Dange, Tonwan Jeve, Toni Shiju Jetasumbata, Shebe Chobe, Jusenja Loji Nando, DJ Delegent Meadow, Menjan Len Drugi Sencheba Ne, Pimbi Laja, Tumo member, also the day in the Zodwa.
And here it says, after you receive the Bodhisattva's vows, breaking the precepts is a transgression that now breaks the precepts which come with these vows. Since it is transgression, it is sufficient that you repair it in the manner in which you have been instructed. A procedure that includes in the precepts of the engaged spirit of enlightenment, and not anywhere else. However, generating the spirit of enlightenment 6 times a day is the one precept specific to the aspirational spirit of enlightenment.
That's it. Tero, Penaro, Naso Chedana, Damba Kandre Chedana, Nasogi, Danson Hoja singing to Lure, Damba Corona Lazana, and the Danson Hoja singing, Johnson Corona Studio, and Tender no Lola, any Chedan Corona Hoja no so, and G. Hoja Dang again, Gation, Season, the Dane, and the Hoja Mano, Shibashan, and soon the Shinta Kitchen and Corona Danson Hoja no Lola, 22 doa, the Kitchen.
So there are specific instructions, Domsum Labja, which means the instruction for the 3 precepts, 3 vows. So in that instructions where it's stated that it is very important that one should really rely upon one's own guidance or the spiritual guidance of the teachers of how one can really preserve or observe one's precepts, the 3 precepts.
다 소소게 도로간에 대대 장지레마도 담바 베데 담발에 사이 쥐셔서래 사이 쥐셔나 담바랑지려나 사이 쥐셔서나 담바 베데 쥐셔서래 담바 매바 말이야 경롱이 저 경롱이나 담바데 매바 차발이 인지미지야나 베데 마스카서 로타 타치도 로타 제거래 야나 아니 그 담바야 퓨거래마도 그 사이 가서 펑바 자동 중화 자제네 담바데 매버 차고 말해 녀바 메트 데도 그 담비로도.
So now once you have once you have break the vows, the root of the vows, in other words, root of the vow, either it is pratimoksha or the other vows, there is no way that one can revitalize or to revive that broken vows. Unlike the other branch vows, that if you have degenerated the secondary vows, then that can be revived and it can be revitalized. However, when you break the actual roots, it is not possible for one to revive it. So in the case of the vows of bhikshus and novice and the fully ordained vows, suddenly if they break the root vows, and such an individual is no longer bhikshu or they're no longer novice monk, or they're no longer a fully ordained monk, there's no way that they can revive that vows. However, it is said that still the imprints of the vows is still existed. The vows or the precepts of the novice or the fully ordained vows is still existed within the stream of that individual. How it will only relinquished when someone generated a very strong wrong views, or someone who actually give up the vows, voluntarily giving up the vows, then the vows will be relinquished. The vows will be no longer existed within the stream of that person, stream of being. Sorry.
다른 거 샤부 짱짱 걸로 아니 다 게츠노야 되는 소장 소래 소다 상바세래 근데 양락이 동안들로 소장 전에야 샤동 전에야 다 줘요요마도 자이 동안 줘서나 아니 샤동 전 다그 말해.
So in the tradition of the bhikshus and fully ordained monks and the novice monks, every 15 days they gathered and engaging in the rituals of sojong, which means reviving and purifying. What is being revived and what is being purified is whatever the negative deeds that may have done in the past within the 15 days is purifying and reviving the secondary vows, degeneration of the secondary vows. When speaking about engaging in the ritual of reviving the secondary vow, reviving the vows, it is not someone who has already degenerated, already broken their vows, the root vows. But once you have broken the root vows, there's no way that we can revive, as we mentioned earlier.
Jason Rangi also over the Tawa Seden in the main said the co Japa Jason Rani, JB Jaremado, or G. Kahilo Chobis or Kahilo Machos and the long sense also you're studying in Rotos, Tawani Remarco, Sai, Joey Chamber, General Yeresanada.
So, since we are the followers of the Buddha and the practice of the Buddha Dhamma, practitioner of the Buddha Dhamma, and in particularly, here I'm referring to to the monks, fully ordained, and then the novice monks. So whether whether they're fully ordained monks or the novice monks, whether they are able to, they can be claim themselves as authentic monks or not. It entirely depends upon how they have analyzed their vows, and after analyzing their vows and identifying their vows, how they have kept intact their vows, how they have preserved and observed their vows. Without observation of the vows, whatever the vows that is mentioned in the Vinaya Sutra, regardless of who you are no longer authentic monks or none. So once you have taken the the vows, either one is the novice vow or the fully ordained vows. We cannot say, oh, this is not, it is the tradition of, it is our own traditions. So long as whether that is a tradition or how precious that tradition may be, if it's actually against your vows, you should not be following such traditions, right? Because Buddha has stated very clearly that whatever the vows that we have talked about, the vows must be observed very carefully. If you engage in any kind of activities, indulge in any kind of activities which contradicts, which is against one's vows and commitments, then you are actually degenerating your vows. So therefore, regardless of what kind of family background or the tradition that we may have, once you have taken the vow, you should always follow the vows.
됐지. 아니 나기 맞춰 상주 생에 담바 옛날에 상하게. 근데 자이 동안 조선아 상하게 담바다서 사대 쇼고에. 근데 상주 생에 담바 옛날 사대년 거야 당. 아니 상하게 담바는 된다 템비 진호이 정도네. 양바 소치 되지. 근데 양고 예식이 양라게 동안들은 조선아이나 아니 니보다기 300원에 샤다전에 다 그랬어도. 근데 이거는 알레 도망가 저기 상주 생에 담바는 말 하자 가르 거래. 근데 상주 가상하게 담바는 말 가르 거래. 아니 소타게 담바님 가르 거래서인데 아니 에스테서 하라 시바잖아 아니 양라 먼저한테 가버려도 자이 동안 먼저 체크해야 돼 아마 빼면서 개체 보러
So now if this, which actually applies to all other vows as well, the Bodhisattva's vow and then the tantric vows or the Vajrayana vows. If you have broken a root vows of the Bodhisattvas, one should then take a Bodhisattva's vow again. You cannot really engage in some kind of confession practice and revive that Bodhisattva. So this will not happen. You have to take it from the beginning. Similarly, if you have taken the tantric vows or the Vajrayana vows, and that's that by if your vows the tantric, if you break the root vows of the tantra, then you again have to take the tantric vows again all the way from the beginning in the presence of the supported and supporting mandalas. Then be careful. Otherwise, you will not be able to revive once you break the root vows of the Tantra and Bodhisattva's vow. However, if you have just degenerated the secondary vows of Tantra and Bodhisattvas, this can be revived by engaging in the confession practice through the application of the four powerful antidotes. So therefore, it is very important that we need to know, once you have taken the Bodhisattva's vows and Tantric vows, as well as the Pratimoksha vows and so on, one should understand what kind of vows or the precept that one need to preserve and one need to observe. and by identifying each of those vows, by following the instructions given by the great masters of the past. So this is very, very important. And the most important part here is making sure that you're actually not breaking the root vows. That's a very, very important.
that's also like about Dambasong, I said, and the Dambasong and the Sanson are go good like ba. Jim Choking, Chichoko Madison, and Sambason at the Roa.
So we already talked about that. What is meant by Dompasua, which means protecting. The literal translation for that is Dompasua is protecting one's vow. How we could protect one's vow is by protecting one's mind. That is all about. We need to protect one's mind in order to protect one's vow.
Trigger Dambasong Guegi, Jacent the Hegoroa, and Kotsa Chimbo Nyago Carre Sessona, Kotsa Chimbo Nyasona, Ranil Kesoyaba, and Zachimbo de Mania, Ushawayana, and Jungo Yoba, Jungo Yobi Gala, and G. Mazoranshi Kanamato singing the JB Kanamato singing, and Kennedy Jetta de Majana, and the Junira de Jairo.
So therefore, one should understand for what purpose that I need to, preserve and observe those vows and the precepts. Why I should. What is the reason for observing those vows? And so one should understand very clearly the benefits and the advantages and the disadvantages of observing and not observing the vows. It is very important to understand. Just like that if you have a very precious, if you consider this vows as a very precious, then why don't we really preserve and protect that precious vows once you have received it and one recognizes as a precious. So one should extract benefits out of observing one's vows. So therefore, it is very important to observe the vows that one have received. There are primarily two kinds of vows. Jebe Kanamatoba is and then Ranji Kanamatoba. There are two different vows, which is the vows that are prescribed that need to be, it is not necessarily by naturally it is a negative acts, but it's a prescribed, vows. There are one category of vows that is a prescribed, and there's another category of vows that by nature itself, by action, by engaging in such action, it naturally become a negative acts. So there are one naturally negative acts and one is the prescribed, by negative acts and so forth. So once you have taken the vows, one need to observe both of this.
Laba the Shanju singing, Damba singing, say the Chidam Jen the Mador Jiroa. To do your Damba Sonshina, Sewa dan Shambi, Roa, Sewa dan Shambi Rani, Shedder Zobamatse, Ranchin Tanti Shedder Zongi. To do your Damba Song in China, Gangi came into a cheaper in the Soya.
So here, especially when speaking about the Bodhisattva's vow, it is somewhat different kind of vows than the other vows. And if you look at the vows, compare the vows to others, here, once you have received the Bodhisattva's vow, understanding why we are receiving and observing this Bodhisattva's vow, one should be actually voluntarily, engaged, voluntarily, accepting the vows and promoting and preserving those vows, because the very vow that we are taking is to really to develop a great sense of compassion, love for other beings. So such a precious vow, if we have received such a precious vow, why wouldn't we joyfully embrace these vows?
Damba the Lansa de Mason and Yenda Lepet Nipa Chambo, Yanga Chambo, Carasana, this Shanju sang a Damba Land, Ranji Sanjatanji Pandaja, Shuji Sanjatanji Pandaja, Ranji Sanjatanji Dune Kenechane, and the Kene Tanta Jachambo Shujiroa. The rich in Lushawa in Ranji Sanjatanji, Gogo Tansha, Shuji Sanjan and Godo, Sanja Sanjan Yanga Gogo Tanshangi. Yanka Chambo, is John and the Love Chambo.
So here now, let's just look at here, when receiving the Bodhisattva's vow, the vows, we are receiving the Bodhisattva's vow in the presence of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions by accepting them as one's witness. You're keeping them as you're considering them as your witness that you're committing from now on. Never abandon working for the welfare of other sentient beings, and visualizing and accepting entire sentient beings. You are committing to working for the welfare of entire sentient beings. Once you have taken such a vows, it is not okay for one to actually abandon a sentient being, not working for the welfare of other sentient beings. So therefore, it is very, very important to not to let our bodhisattva's vows undergo degenerations, because see, if you're able to observe these vows, you get great benefit out of it. If it is not, then you're actually deceiving both Buddhas as well as Buddhas and bodhisattvas, and as well as all other sentient beings, because you have put Buddha and bodhisattvas as your witness, and you are committed yourself to working for all other sentient beings, putting all the sentient beings in front of oneself.
Jibu Chendi Chonsong Jibu Chembi Leka Karajesana, and Kenland de Jen Leka Kanin Gozu, Sata Leka Dena Gozu, Shanchu Santi, Shanchu Sanjene, and Sinjan Taji, Dag and Jordan, Shanchu Shanchu Yonshiba Jesedi, and Shanchu Sembi Shoba Yidon Della, and Logan singing, that then what to you do.
So until now we are on the stages of the path for the person of the great capacity, right? Accepting oneself as the person of great capacities. What is the task? What kind of duty that one may carry by accepting oneself as the person of great capacity? It is for the generation of bodhicitta, right? That is your duty. That is one's duty. By working for the welfare of entire sentient beings. That is what is meant by. That is what is the actual activities of the stages. The person of great capacities. So. No.
So that the natural law and carapondicos and the Lanchi Chimogi called Jonshin over there, and Shania dancing and Juman with Sonjuba the Sayedi, May Shan dancing nails on the Juba Chendi Chonso Yalan, the Rinchi Lana, and Nasono combat mass on the range of Zid and Lena, Damasogi Lincent over the Chinyaki Lincent over the calendars and Shanchuki San and Cheki, Chanson de Lola Panchi T. That did mention the Katacha was and just says Shanchu Samba no Jishoba Catalogue, say it.
So if you were to, if we were to ask to encapsulate the actual teachings of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Jiangchu Lam Rim Chenmo, it's mentioned in the text itself by saying this teachings begins from Shinyin Tenso, which is relying upon one's spiritual teachers, all the way to the Milubi Sungju, to the unity, the unity of unlearned unities. In other words, unlearned unities, which means complete state of enlightenment. So, how we can really achieve such goal to state of complete enlightenment, beginning from this relying upon the spiritual teacher, is then given in very orderly manner of practice of the stages on the path for the person of small capacity, medium capacity, and great capacities. With this, all the stages, the practices are given in a very, sequential manner. And it's really accessible and something that is very convenient for one to engage in such a practice. So it is therefore, we must follow those practices, having received the teachings of the Lam Rim, by following the stages of those, path, following the stages that is given, instructed in the Lam Rim Chenmo.
Tenga zu de yenche le shego de penanga chambore. Ngaso kase thoma ne la yeba. Ani jubu tombo ni jubu chunge dan jeni ye langmo le chiba mare. Ani kase timo yen la chiba zedi jubu chembo chi ye lang nyane jabala jubu de de chungje ge timo yen la ngeba de yong de cheje. Ani lo na ji cha ani de la so so ge kwa che le de dusu yin da azen. Ani ji lang ren ge rimba de lo to le ji de tu na. Me se pyan chamboro.
So as we talked about that, the first two are the stages of the path for the person of small capacity and the medium capacities are said to be the path, which is a common path. Why it is called common path? It is by engaging in such practice of small capacity and medium capacity will only be able to enter into the great capacity. Right? The stages are the path for the person of great capacities. Without, engaging in those above two practices, completing above two, stages of the path for small and middling will not be able to enter oneself automatically on the great capacities, practice of great. It is therefore, those above two paths are called common path.
Tanga soma jahi jane de ma chunjun chen rogi da ne tanga so ko so ba kare hi ne kare cha rogo yore sana ne senje tangje ge da do zo be sanje je ko hon nie ba de ta ba je ge yin ka je ta kha tu she na senje ba ne jen de she senje ta je zo be sanje je ko hon ta be che do ne ngara zo be sanje je ko hon ta ba nie ba de je ge yin seng ge ne shang chu ge sen de nga zo ta da ko zo xie cha ro che.
So now, what we have to understand here, having gone through the discussions of the generation of bodhicitta, is now the mind generation. In other words, the mind generation is for the welfare of other sentient beings. This must be, one should always remember that, having committed oneself into engaging in the practice of the cultivation of bodhicitta. So one's very purpose of generation of bodhicitta is to working for the welfare of other sentient beings. So in order to achieve such a bodhicitta, two aspirations, right? Bodhicitta consists of two aspirations. We talked about earlier what is meant by two aspiration, right? So in order to achieve bodhicitta, consists of two aspirations, one need to first complete or perfect the practice of resolute intention and compassion, great compassion.
Trigger last on the Hinji Chamber Yumbi, Tandala, Los Yang Jena, Yana, just a show like Jonas Sombi, Dajana Jugo to say in the Juggery, Yana, and Georgia Party other say, then be gentlemen at Denjogone, and the Shanchu is Jagore singing. Go there, Lord Rabachi Kotsvache.
So then, if this is how we generate our bodhicitta, by perfecting one's practice of resolute intention and then great compassion, then what kind of instruction that one need to follow here is the instruction, either one should follow the instructions of of the Shantideva's instructions of exchanging self and not exchanging, equalizing and exchanging self with others, and or the lineage descended from the Joji Pantan Atisha, sevenfold instructions on sevenfold cause and effects.
Tendriki Sanjay Tanchi Koi Donghe Senare, and Zub Donghe Tanchi Tenabambe Dewachi Toba Yoye Rochi Hevala, Dombo Rani, and Koi Donghele, Matabachi, Mataba Tabi Tochi Masaba, Jenkole, Tatochi Lomoyo in Sane, Dombo Di Hindala, and Rani, and Koi Nimisane, Rani Itin and Enjoy Sambarangele Chega.
So in order to, free all sentient beings from the samsaric, the suffering nature of samsaric existence, and establishing them to the state of everlasting happiness, first of all, one must, understand the nature of suffering, nature of samsaric existence, and find a method of eliminating, find a method of abandoning those samsaric, the nature of samsara. And with this method, one must, in order to establish such a method within one's stream of being, one must first generate renunciation. One must, generate a repulsion, or the repulsion against samsaric existence.
Tundri Jen Koi Donghele Tawa Cheg, Shebi Lodella, and Jubi Chembe Rimbate Yonche. And Digi Jolo della Rani Ko Rani Chico Rani Ko Tata Chevatella, and Jubin Tuan Langerimba, City, Jubin Chembe Langerimba, Rangile Chevala, Niepato, and Nienju is somebody Nebago in Sane, and tell Jubin Dragon Langer, Jubin Tuan Langerimba, Nebato Gores.
So, in order to generate the spirit of enlightenment, which is the bodhicitta, working for the welfare of all other sentient beings, one must first, perfect one's generation of renunciation, which is also known as the training the mind in the stages of the path shared with the middling capacities. It is common path of the middling capacities, which renunciation is known as the common path. Without engaging in the practice of generating renunciations and perfecting it, one will not be able to generate bodhicitta working for the welfare of other sentient beings.
Rani Koi Donghele Tato Shabala, and Joashima Penja Hada Me Tenjila. Tato do to get tenji money, but yes, we teach on the Genesona, or Rani Koi Donghele Tai, touch the passage, Donghele Metawa, Donghele Corona, Tana Sambi, Sozoro in Zane, and Joashima, and Dendri Tenji, Mataba Tobidu Sengi, and Dendri Joashima Dendri Totochi, and Juba Sengi line, Jubichung and the Tomo and Langeribas.
So, in order to free oneself from this cyclic existence, one must work for. One must engage in the practice which enables one to gain a rebirth within either high realms, rebirth within the high realms, either deva realms or the human realms, without which one will not be able to generate renunciations. One will not be able to generate renunciations against samsaric existence, because once you have entered into the lower realms, there is no way that one can generate such a renunciations against samsaric existence. So therefore, it is inevitable for oneself to engage in the actions which becomes a cause for giving rise to, rebirth within the higher realms, So therefore, this practice is what is known as the practice of small capacities, shared, or the common small capacities.
다 든드게 신주게 든드게 터자송을 신주치 제윤데 아니 다다라니를 찾는데 작은도에 작은도 세는 신주치 제윤데 아니 다다 아니 된저 이니 메이 때리대타 아니 대유메데 타보마지 찾진도에 찾진 창소는 수선 잔도 시에데 된저 된쳐와 생기게 인디기 고아데 창소대가 해요 그러와 든드게 마음반에 주샤 송보데 라니게 루투도에서 라니게 취지보네 라니게 내다지 따용데 아니 라니데 짜침보 쉬우제데 주나
So now then, if this is his case, at this time, if we were to ask ourselves, are we equipped with all those conditions? Do we have all those causes and conditions of attaining the three accomplishment that is to be accomplished, three accomplishment we talked about earlier? If we were to look at ourselves, and then suddenly we have taken the rebirth as a human beings in a human body at this point, and we have, if we really put in effort by understanding how important it is for us to engage in the practice to accomplish the three stages that is to be accomplished by oneself, we have all those capacities. It is therefore one must understand the preciousness of one's, human rebirth, and by recognizing that rebirth, one must make good use of it in pursuit of the three accomplishment.
다 던지기 원에 가나 찾진 던지진 장후도 당연 두고인다선 원나 간지 두고인다서요. 아니 던지기 두발로 두치디 셰게 셰발로 더고 더발로 라마노와 땡이게 라마칭이 받다 땡고도 선을로요. 다가랑 고신이 땡시 다가랑 레요.
So then here, yes, I do possess all those qualities or the causes and conditions to accomplish what is to be accomplished. So when you ask these questions, then how do we accomplish? That is the next question. Well, what manner that I can accomplish? When you ask these questions, then relying upon a spiritual teacher, authentic spiritual teachers coming into picture, which actually give rise to automatically, which naturally give rise to the practice of relying upon spiritual teacher, authentic spiritual teacher, which is the first chapter, beginning of the first chapter of the Lam Rim Chenmo.
타나데 가려여서나 다 대연체니 그러마데 되면체라 라니 제반지 진지기 존에 세 터니에스게요 말이 다 모쳐데 라네 도셔로 다 가서 대연 존에 겐세네 샹추센제 따시는 데네 데든 로라 신시 스시 지루진 저 세기게 아니 샹추센기 편에 대시네 오늘 센터 레고에데 다 대연체를 레고 당하죠.
So this is the discussion that we had is how we can really apply a remedy towards our chronic disease of self-cherishing mind. So it is now through the generation or the accomplishment of the spirit of enlightenment, which is the bodhicitta, will elevate oneself from this chronic disease of self-cherishing mind. So it is therefore, it says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva, and the first chapter of the benefits of generating bodhicitta, where it stated that well, if you are able to ride on the horse of the bodhicitta, it will transcend from one joyful existence to another joyful existence.
데 할레로 특히 나저 영에 제나 될 지루잖아 가르잖아 되그래서 가시 또신데 면전에 세제로
If one is wise enough, then why don't we really engage in such a practice? Since it actually transcends from one blissful existence to another blissful existence, why don't we put in effort if we are wise enough?
되지 다 되게 때 가서 사실 손이 들어셔로 되는 게 자기 손바스 센제는 셔발을 호치라 손 센제는 로발을 로고비 전세 터시레라월레 로바 로베 산제 민주바 템바 로발을 로비 그심바 니시바 오 손도.
So now we are going through the text here again, how to learn the Bodhisattva's deeds after developing the spirit of enlightenment, right? So here it said how to learn the Bodhisattva's deeds after developing the spirit of enlightenment has 3 parts. First, it said the reason why you must learn the trainings after developing the spirit of enlightenment. Second, demonstrating that you will not become a Buddha by learning either method or the wisdom separately. Third, it says explanation of the purpose, explanation of the process of learning the precepts. And then the precepts, so chapter 8 and so on, right? Chapter 8 and so on.
되지. 당가서 대자긴 당가 중에 단지 랑이 림바도 쇼쇼지 가사 라다 또바나 이게. 근데 고시에 된지네 네 주문을 손주주 봐도. 너무나 전에게 그냥 양서 내기. 네 양서 내네 라지 선자다지 되게 랑지 림바를 치네. 아니 손주주 고번요도 타고 제게 제토바냐. 근데 주변 남만한지 신절로도서 산하니. 오늘 산로 초다 되면도는 뭐하다 뭐하다. 텔라하지가 좀 개개제야 말이야.
So here, now let's do the dedications, by, focusing on whatever this discussion that we had earlier about the cultivation of the bodhicitta. And think about that. Try to, think briefly from the practice, beginning from relying upon a spiritual teacher, and the process all the way to the unity, that attainment of the state of unity, which is the state of complete enlightenment. May I achieve the state of unity by engaging in practice beginning from relying upon the spiritual teacher and so on. And this is such a wonderful, may all those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions please bless me to be able to do this. This is such a wonderful prayers as well as dedications. There's no other dedication prayers that we will find, better than this.
Kada yamba gashi sabade lomi mote gyudon rowa nanje jaye ombo dajuji dhamma sumbi tsero gyudo yang jambe yangje tsebe jizone tembe rinpa gyuzon nanje chu nyene drubi jena nyeshi shu rangi chijen dobe nanje Shudra Tsewe Changwe Tage 如也一直明白这些呢，要也等把有人研究解，等把人间说给马家嘛，悄悄娘把这边说的呢，你这前边一绕就把一。偏偏点点三王三王手，三间家业没用天天的，连着上秋浪着天边上，他的浪着一浪别的心，家业在把人都讲究起，浪上周边天见周些见，眼见世界没当面面跟。塞罗更多家业我把也，那这我马就见，刚才天把出了就学见，最近住了做把天边菜，土地那就到处出些见，这些将最属。有就是老面过菜找点钱，能够趁的手就结果路上点别人们撒送去，这也没事到多年就去，旁着过于西毛寺，偏当的我忙的就远的。现在在我点在家作业，小别身体不多点就急，江边暴雨知道前不更多人不点样的得到根就是道路去，给我得到当街肉多我就从西边叫我当街。我刚了就多广播的，大家给月早晚的跟着，从不是肉多。哎呀，突然呢，Thank you，Good night，
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank
Night,
you. Thank
Rinpoche.
you.